Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Marler, opening statement, please, sir.
Thank you. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Bill Marler. I'm a trial lawyer. My law firm, Marler Clark, located in Seattle, Washington, specializes in representing victims of foodborne illness. Unfortunately for my clients and many of the corporations that are going to come after me, I've been in business too long. I thank you for the honor of being allowed to testify before this committee. I'm proud of the work this committee has done to try to improve food safety throughout the United States. Although I've never had the honor to testify before Congress, I have had the honor to be here before in 1994 for Senate hearings about the lack of safety in our food supply. At that time, I was with Breanne Kiner, then 9 years old, who spent 6 months hospitalized, suffered acute kidney failure and multiple strokes, had her large intestine removed, was in a coma for over a month, and spent 100 days on dialysis, all from eating a hamburger. 13 years later, I was here again in April of this year, this time with Ashley and Isabella Armstrong, who I think the committee would all agree were the cutest kids you've ever seen before any committee, victims of more of the recent spinach outbreak that sickened 205, killing 5. I was with Sean Pruden, a victim of the E. coli outbreak at Taco Bell that sickened over 100, and with Terry Marshall, whose mother-in-law has remained in a nursing home to this day after eating a few spoonfuls of Salmonella-tainted peanut butter. Since 1993, I've had the privilege to represent thousands of Americans, some your constituents. In 2002, during the middle of yet another E. coli outbreak, during the middle of another visit to an ICU to watch a new client struggle for life attached to more tubes than you can imagine, I penned an op-ed for the Denver Post. Here's part of it. This summer, scores of Americans, most of them small children and senior citizens, have already or will become deathly ill after eating ground beef boldly labeled USDA approved. The now infamous outbreak started with a few sick kids in Colorado and quickly spread coast to coast, eventually triggering the recall of 19 million pounds of ground beef tainted with E. coli 0157H7. Because their parents trusted our government's food inspections, several kids suffered kidney failure and dialysis or weeks hooked up to all sorts of machines. For some, the long-term prognosis is grim, with the risk of further kidney failure, dialysis, transplants, or worse. Most of these kids' parents have hired me to help them get compensation for hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical costs and the risk of future kidney failure. That may prompt some readers to consider me a blood-sucking ambulance chaser who exploits other people's personal tragedies. If that is the case, here's my plea: put me out of business. For this trial lawyer, E. coli has been a far too successful practice and a heartbreaking one. I'm tired of visiting with horribly sick kids who did not have to be sick in the first place. I am outraged with a food industry that allows E. coli and other poisons to reach consumers and a president, Congress, and federal regulatory system that does nothing about it. Stop making kids sick, and I will happily move on. That, ladies and gentlemen, was in 2002. The time has finally come to put me out of business. The CDC estimates that there are still 76 million Americans getting sick every year, each and every year, from eating food. That means 1 in 4 Americans will contract a foodborne illness every year. Hundreds of thousands will be hospitalized and thousands will die. That's the human suffering part. There's also a business part. Billions of dollars will be spent on medical treatment, and many more billions will be in lost wages, in recall costs, in the sale of food, and yes, in legal fees to defend and prosecute these companies. Civil litigation in America is a blunt instrument for change. It is better for the government and business to work together to eliminate the need for lawsuits and lawyers. When American business poisons its customers and when our regulatory agencies do not have the manpower, willingness, or ability to help businesses perform, people die and market share is lost nationally and internationally. It is time to help business and consumers to simply make me unnecessary. If you fix the food safety system, trial lawyers like me will become a small, irrelevant footnote in history, but you will be remembered and honored for helping to fix a broken system. The issue of food safety is not new, of course. A century ago, Upton Sinclair's book, The Jungle, exposed both contamination of meat processing and corruption that led inspectors to look the other way. What has changed since Upton Sinclair's time? Are we better off than we were 100 years ago? A year ago, I was asked by the spinach and lettuce growers of California to address them in Salinas. Considering that by then the leafy green industry was on its knees financially and I had lawsuits pending in several states, it was a bit of a tense lunch. Why was I invited? I'm frankly still not sure, but why I was suing them was all too clear. In the prior 10 years, there had been 21 outbreaks related to fresh leafy products, with hundreds sickened. In 2006, hundreds became sick and 5 died from eating E. coli contaminated spinach, followed quickly by lettuce outbreaks at Taco Bell and Taco John. The common denominator, California lettuce and spinach, and more lawsuits. Mexico banned the importation of California spinach and lettuce. I told the quiet audience of growers and producers a story that I believed at the time to be true. I told them I had seen since the 1993 Jack-in-the-Box case. I told them what seemed to have happened after Jack-in-the-Box crisis was the incidence of E. coli seemed to decline. In fact, the CDC indicated by year 2006 that E. coli cases tied to ground beef had gone down by 42%. I told them that they should emulate what the beef industry did, that the beef industry had worked hard to put me out of business. And the reason I can say that is because during that 2003 to early 2007, I had no ambulances to chase because I simply had no E. coli victims tied to E. coli, not tied to hamburger. And then the spring of 2007 started with an ominous uptick in E. coli recalls and illnesses and ended with hundreds sickened, 33 million pounds of meat recalled, and guess what? More sick and dead children, and guess what? More lawsuits. China banned the import of U.S. beef. And if you ask the USDA and industry to explain this uptick, they have none. It's unacceptable. Although things are certainly different from Upton Sinclair's time, there are some big similarities and certainly some things that are new and different challenges. First, there's a terrorist threat to our food system. Just as too many could not imagine the horror of 9/11, too many cannot envision the kind of food disaster today. When a terrorist attacks our food system, it will look eerily similar to any other outbreaks of foodborne illness. Second is the growth of imports. Sinclair could not have imagined a world where the meat that may be in one hamburger could originate in Argentina, Canada, and Colorado, or that we would have vegetables year-round from South America, Asia, and Africa. It is with these two enormous issues in mind, I offer 5 suggestions how to finally put me out of business. First, create a local, state, and national public health system that catches outbreaks before they balloon into personal and business catastrophe. CDC PulseNet and FoodNet, as one of the members mentioned, were launched after the Jack-in-the-Box outbreak and are rightly credited for helping reduce the size of outbreak by helping more quickly conclude the suspect product was causing harm. But surveillance of human, bacterial, and viral disease is lacking. For many foodborne illnesses, for every culture-positive case, 20 to 50 other cases are missed because of lack of surveillance. Most people who become ill with a bacterial viral disease are either seldom seen or never cultured. The more people are tested, the greater the likelihood that a source, accidental or not, will be found sooner. Second, actually inspect and sample food before it's consumed. At present, local and state authorities, along with the USDA and FDA, employ thousands of inspectors across the nation and world to inspect tens of thousands of plants that produce billions of pounds of food. The GAO has warned that our food sampling and inspection system is so scattered and infrequent, there's little chance of detecting microscopic E. coli or other pathogens for that matter. Third, consider mandatory recall authority on all food products. Recalls must be completely transparent. If a recall is ordered, consumers need to know what in fact is being recalled. Full disclosure must be the rule. Under the present system of voluntary recalls, last September we saw the disastrous Tops recall, where the company knowingly left E. coli contaminated product on store shelves weeks after being confronted with an ill customer and his product both testing positive for E. coli. Fourth, merge and then adequately fund the 3 federal agencies responsible for food safety. Right now, USDA, FDA share this mission with the CDC. The system is, in a sense, trifurcated, which leads to turf wars and split responsibilities. We need one independent agency that deals with foodborne pathogens. You have a moral responsibility to consumers in your hometown or anywhere U.S. goods are sold. It is time to adequately fund our health and safety authorities to help businesses protect their consumers. Finally, we cannot completely regulate ourselves out of this. Standards need to be set with the entire food chain at the table, from farmer to manufacturer to retailer and customer. Standards must also be based upon good science. We must invest in solid research at our land-grant institutions to help producers manufacture food that is safe, nutritious, and the envy of the world. Thank you very much.